Joe Biden is committed to picking a woman as his vice president, but not necessarily a woman of color. Stacey Abrams, she's one of the women being considered for the job. She shared her thoughts on The View yesterday about Biden being non-committal on that. Let's take a listen.
Women of color, particularly black women, are the strongest part of the Democratic Party, the most loyal. But that loyalty isn't simply how we vote, it's how we work. And if we want to signal that that work will continue, that we're going to reach not just to certain segments of our community, but to the entire country, then we need a ticket that reflects the diversity of America.
However, whether a candidate is a person of color or not isn't necessarily a deal breaker for voters of color. In fact, it actually seems that white people were the most bothered by the fact that it's an old white man who is now the Democratic nominee. That's according to a poll we covered here yesterday by the Pew Research Center. Former Sanders campaign national co-chair and Ohio State Senator Nina Turner joins us now with her perspective on the Veep stakes. Great to see you, Nina. So first, just give us overall how you're looking at the vice presidential conversation from a left perspective. What do you think that progressives should be hoping for here?
From a liberation perspective, it is where does that person that he may potentially pick stand on the issues? How do they feel about universal health care? And people are literally dying right now, and there's no time to equivocate on Medicare for all. Where do they stand on canceling student debt? Where do they stand on the environment? Where do they stand on racial inequities in this country? Where do they stand on canceling student debt? And on and on and on. So for me and other progressives, it is about the issues first.
Mm-hmm. And, Nina, one of the things that struck me on that is it just seems like a very hollow way of looking at politics, which is that, people of a certain race don't back a candidate just because they look like them. It's exactly as you said. It's for the reasons that it's for the positions that people hold. Can you talk to us about that, both from your personal experience and then what you learned on the Sanders campaign, just in his own appeal to black and Hispanic voters at much higher rates than, say, like a Cory Booker or a Kamala Harris?
I mean, yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. Absolutely. Those constituencies, and particularly millennials and Gen Zs who are old enough to vote, really believed in the movement itself. And what was it about that movement? It wasn't just any movement. It was a movement towards liberation and changing the material conditions of the poor and the working poor and the barely middle class in this country. Those younger voters understood very clearly the type of future that they wanted to see. And that is why Senator Sanders appealed to younger voters, particularly black. At one point, black youth, overwhelmingly greater than any other ethnic or racial group, was polling highest with Senator Sanders, but he took all voters of color in the youth category, the young adult category. And it was because of what he was standing for. It's the kind of future that they envision for themselves and their future children if they so decide to have children. And to me, many of the younger voters had a bigger and better vision towards justice than some of the more seasoned voters. So it definitely had nothing to do with age. It had nothing to do with gender or ethnicity. It was all about where the senator stood on the issues that animate the lives of these young people. And I must also say that there were some seasoned folks. They always reminded me on the trail that it wasn't just about the young people, but people who gravitate to the senator and this movement in totality. It really is about the issues and not about any other thing. Issues first. And then after that, certainly people want to see themselves reflected. It is high time in this country, absolutely, that there is more color at the top. But color for the sake of color, when you're going to continue to do the same things, does not change the material conditions of the lives of people in this country. And that is absolutely key. And Sagar, you are absolutely right. It is a very cynical way to look at politics, but that's where we are at this moment.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. We covered this Pew Research poll yesterday because I think it's so interesting, but you were the first person I wanted to get your thoughts on it. Basically, they asked voters, Democratic primary voters, if they were bothered by the fact that Joe Biden is an old white man. And white voters, and especially if you dig into the crosstabs, it's like affluent, post-grad degree holding white voters were the people that were most uncomfortable with that. And actually the people who were fine with it and least bothered by it were African American voters. Why do you think that is? What do you think accounts for that dynamic?
I mean, for the more affluent voters, hashtag woke crowd. Let me not play with these folks. Maybe they sincerely believe that. but there may be some guilt there. I don't know. As far as African American voters, I mean, we certainly have always been more egalitarian, more welcoming of people, absolutely. And when it comes to the Democratic Party, I know that people like to break out that Black women voted in the midterms 92% for Democrats. I believe Black men were 88%. The Black community overall was 90%. Black folks vote for the Democratic candidate. And it is clear, as was illuminated, that when you had Senator Booker in the race, you had Senator Harris in the race, when given a choice to vote for Black folks still chose to vote for the white candidates. And so I want to say for the Black community, we really do, see this not necessarily through a racialized lens, but it is high time. And I want to say, let me not second guess. And it is high time, though, that we have a critical lens towards what does that kind of leadership really look like? And should the African American community continue without getting much from it? Leader Abrams was absolutely right in her critique, and absolutely get nothing for that kind of loyalty, even if it's just symbolic.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, we covered this morning on the show that when it's Trump versus Biden, Trump has actually made significant gains amongst the non-white electorate vis-a-vis Joe Biden. Why do you think that is? Why is it that Joe Biden is actually consolidating support amongst older voters, particularly older white voters, while Trump is actually making inroads with younger voters and non-white voters? What is it about Biden's message that he's kind of losing parts of the Obama coalition there?
We need some excitement. These are heavy and hard times. They have been for a long time. The pandemic is just bringing it to the fore. But if you talk to people who have been suffering in this country for years, they've been enduring a different kind of pandemic. It's called life. Life that happens when you're Black. Life that happens when you're brown. Life that happens when you're indigenous. Life that happens when you are poor. They've been enduring a type of a pandemic. And so to get people to vote, I have a news flash. It doesn't happen in the head first. It happens in the heart. And you must excite people. And Trump, as bad as he is, as rotten as he is, as wrong as he is, he does bring a certain type of excitement. And if the Democrats want to, in fact, defeat President Donald J. Trump, there are many things they need to do. But one of those things is to have some excitement, some authenticity. That's what we need. And so, my God, I'm really nervous now that you're saying more young folks and more people of color are gravitating that way. Lord, America, what the hell are we doing?
It's a big tent. There's a lot of room over here.
Yeah. Senator Nina Turner. Yeah. Always great to have you. Great to see you. Have a great day. Thank you.
You both. Thank you.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.